Hi, Shel Brodnax here with Stager Talk Real Estate Staging Association. I am so thrilled today to bring to you Vern Yip. Vern, welcome. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
So Vern just spoke at RISACon 2018 and was just a huge success. So we want to take a few minutes to talk to him and just ask him a couple questions that have been posed by our members. So first question, Vern, would be, who decides design trends? Everybody's just dying to know, how does that all work? Who says what's popular and what's not?
It's so funny because, you think it's probably going to be like 5 people in a dark room with like a little light bulb over a table. But it's not. Design trends are largely determined by what's happening in the rest of the world. So a lot of cues that happen from, for example, the film industry, then get passed on to the fashion industry, and then get passed on to the interior design industry. And that's largely how it happens. It's really what's happening from a cultural standpoint in our world. And if you get enough people on the same page, it begins to filter out. I always think of it as like a strainer. All this content is out there, and the stuff that people collectively agree on begins to fall through the strainer, and then it gets to the next strainer and the next strainer. Well, we are one of the last at the bottom because we are one of the most permanent. In the interior design industry, you're not talking about a sweater or a scarf or a movie. I mean, we're talking about something that is a physical entity that's going to be in somebody's home for quite some time. So that's really how it happens. It happens from the film and the television industry down to the fashion world, down to the interior design world, and then what comes out, then we sort of see what sticks.
Absolutely. So let me ask you a little bit about the trends with finishes, like appliances. You spoke earlier. So stainless steel, in or out? Is it classic? Is it always going to stay?
Yes. Stainless steel is classic. It will never go out of style. It is ubiquitous. It is something that works with everything. And what I love is the advancements in how they are making stainless steel appliances to be less susceptible to smudging, less susceptible to fingerprints. Of course, you always have new appliance finish trends that are on the horizon. A lot of people are talking about the comeback of black appliances and the comeback of the new white appliance. All those things are always sort of bubbling up to the surface, but I think stainless steel is one that will always look sort of timeless and classic.
Love it. I do love the stainless steel look. We just did my kitchen and I did it all in stainless and I couldn't be happier with it. So next question would be, as a designer, you're still involved actively designing homes. When you were building your business and it got to the point where you needed to bring on staff and employees, what is your best advice for that entrepreneur who needs to step back and delegate a little bit? It's a little scary to kind of turn the reins over to somebody else. What would you tell them?
Well, I would say first, what is it that you're trying to achieve? What that vision is of what you're trying to achieve, and having a clear handle on it is of utmost importance. So, I'll give you the example. If your idea is to grow your business to be as large as possible, to do as many homes in as many spaces as possible, that's a different goal than saying, you know what, I really love being hands-on, I really love being in the field, and if I take myself out of that situation, I'm going to be less joyful and less happy. So you have to gauge, what your definition of success is first. I think it's also really important to understand what you're really good at versus what you're okay at versus what you're just bad at. And we're all, made up of so many skill sets. And, it's really good to sort of be able to admit that you're not good at something. I'm terrible at most things, truthfully. But what I'm really good at is design. So at the end of the day, I don't want to be keeping my own accounting books.
Right.
I don't want to be obsessed and immersed in just spreadsheets or immersed in the minutia of running a business, which is super important. If you don't run a business properly, then it doesn't matter how talented you are. So I think it's important to understand. For me, I've always had so much joy with the actual process of designing. It's something that I could probably delegate. I could probably train folks to sort of understand how I think about design and why I do what I do, because a lot of how I think is very logical. It is that confluence of function and aesthetics. But at the end of the day, I would be less happy. I would have less joy in my life.
Right.
And I could have a much bigger business, but I don't want to. So, running Vern Yip Designs, taking on private clients, I only take on a couple of private clients a year, and it has absolutely nothing to do with money. It has to do with, am I the right fit? Is this going to be joyful? Are we going to have fun doing this project? And if I can tick off those boxes, then, then I really look at it. But again, I think it's important to just have honest conversations with yourself and to have clear goals and clear directives, and then to put in the right people who can sort of support you to get to the end.
Excellent. And there's also a lot of trust factor too with the people that you bring on.
Sure.
You want to trust that they are the right people. I have a saying that with my staff, I try to find the best people I possibly can, and I get out of their way. I don't like to micromanage. I don't care how. If I have a goal for you, I'm going to give you the goal. How you get to it is up to you, because I don't want to micromanage. But I get out of their way and let them do what they do best.
I think that's really good, solid, sound advice. We've all come up the ranks. We've all climbed the ladder, and we all know what it's like to probably be overmanaged, to have somebody just sort of sitting on your shoulder and looking over it the entire time. It's uncomfortable. And I think people do a better job when they feel like you trust them.
Absolutely.
So it's really up to you as the person who's running the business to really investigate and make sure you do have the right person. I think that is key. And right in a lot of different ways. Right meaning that they have the right skill set, they're qualified, but right also in that their energy is the kind of energy you want to be around. They're the kind of person that you want to collaborate with. I am a full believer that work should be joyful. The work environment should be a happy environment, and it's difficult to do that if people just aren't gelling.
Yeah, this is true. Collaboration, I love it. I
Yes.
love collaborating. So let's talk about staging, switch gears a little bit.
Sure.
So for staging, what's the difference between a well-designed room versus a well-staged room?
Very little, truthfully. I think there is very little difference. I think, oftentimes what it comes down to is when, who your end client really is. As a designer, I always consider my best tools to be my ears. It's really about listening to what people are saying, listening to what they need, listening to what makes them happy, and giving them the best version of that. But, as somebody who's been on HGTV for over a decade, as somebody who's had that assignment of designing a space, not for a specific person, but just to design it, it's not dissimilar from what I think a lot of stagers are doing, because there is an end goal when it comes to staging, but it's not necessarily a specific person or a specific family. It's working to service a slightly different end goal. But outside of that, as I was talking about my presentation, we are both really still on the same path of designing a space to be the ultimate use of it. I'm designing it to really serve the function of somebody specific and what they need to do. If somebody says to me, I'm a big entertainer and I love to be able to sit 8 to 10 people in this living room, that's information that a stager may not be working with. They might be working with a different set of information to really kind of maximize the use of a space to present it in its best light. But outside of that, we're working with largely the same principles.
So with staging, it really takes, a stager is going to come in and out in typically a day, a few hours, and they usually stage the main key rooms. With a design client, do they mostly come to you, I'm really curious, to do one room, or is it a whole house, or do you start with one room, and what's the average lifespan of a client dealing?
Yeah, so it's funny for me at this point in my career, and it's not going to be the same for everybody, obviously. But I am primarily working with clients who I have been servicing for a couple decades now. People who I'm working on their 4th home or their 5th home or their vacation home, and we're doing it sort of top to bottom, down to these are the hangers that are in the closet.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, well, it is if that's what they want.
Yeah.
For me, I take a lot of joy out of being able to give somebody the ultimate space, the ultimate expression of them, the ultimate place that's going to support their memory-making ability. That's really what you want to do. And so much of what I do happens, I oftentimes, like a stager, will go in and do the installation in a couple of days for the entire house. It doesn't, all that work ahead of time, though, is what is very time consuming for me. And I'm sure stagers do the same thing. It's not like you're just walking into a space and you immediately have everything that you need at your fingertips. You have to look at the space first and then figure out and plan like what it is that you need to bring in, and then come in and do the install. I operate in a very similar fashion.
Excellent. A question about the kids. Are they inspired by design, and do they get to have influence over their rooms?
Yes, the kids are very interested in design, and yes, they get to have a say over their rooms. It's funny, when we first were expecting our first child, our first son, Gavin, I got this advice that, a lot of friends came in and they said, all the stuff that you see on your tables and things that they can reach, you have to say goodbye. It's all going to go away. And I wasn't raised that way. I was raised in a household full of beautiful items, things that I could access and touch, fine artwork, beautiful antiques. And I knew what was meant for looking at versus what was meant for gently touching versus what I could really handle. And I broke many things, but it impacted my life in a way that I could not have ever conceived of. The idea that I was growing up around beautiful things, that I became very visually sensitive, this appreciation for beauty, all of that was developed from a seed that was planted when I was a kid by living in an environment full of beautiful elements. And so I really wanted that same experience for our kids. And so they did not have typical nurseries. We filled them with fine art. They had beautiful things from the beginning because I felt like I wanted to give them things that they could grow with, things that they could even take with them when they went off to college, things that they could take with them when they went off and got married, to buy things for a lifetime. So they've grown up with sort of very different spaces, and it's been interesting to see how that's impacted them and their design choices as we're changing the rooms to fit their individual styles.
I love that. I know I watched Nate Berkus' show recently, and their home was just so beautiful. And their little girl, Poppy, was just running through. I'm like, how do they keep the house so clean? And she's not touching anything? And I think it's the same approach. I know when I grew up, we had one room that you weren't allowed in, and everything else was fair game.
The museum.
The museum room, where nobody can sit in, the living room that's just for guests, and you can't be in that room. So what's on the horizon for you? What do you have upcoming? What are you working on? Yeah,
it's an exciting time in my life. My second book, Vacation at Home, is coming out next year, and I'm really thrilled to have that opportunity. My second fabric and trim collection launched in the fall of last year. I just finished a new lighting collection. I have wall covering debuting later on this year, and of course the new season of Trading Spaces. So it's an exciting time, to be working as a designer. But no matter what, my first priority is still always my family. Gavin is 8, Vera is 7, and it's this idea that, as I get older and really get more perspective on life, I always view that no matter what, no matter how great the opportunities are, no matter how special the things I get to do are, nothing tops being a dad and being a family man.
That's awesome. I love it. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You are a killer trendsetter. Everybody has adored you. We polled, like I said when I talked to you on the phone, we polled our members, said, who is it that you want to see? You are at the top of the list, and I really appreciate you joining us this year. It's
Thank
been
you.
fantastic to
I
have
appreciate it. It's been such a pleasure to be here. I'm sure my family stuffed those ballots, but I appreciate it. It's been lovely, and I congratulate you and Risa on all the success.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right, Shel Brodnax here, Real Estate Staging Association. We're going to wrap it up for this episode of Stager Talk. Until next time, happy staging. Bye.